So yeah, I'll introduce Colin. Colin's been a part of the CodeBase community for years and years. In fact, before CodeBase existed, a true stalwart, always been super supportive and helpful to new founders. I think he's got a huge amount of experience building Float and his agency before that I'm sure he'll tell you about. Yeah, just an all-round super smart, helpful guy. And I'm really glad that he's come along to talk to everyone today. So I guess, do you want to kick off by talking a bit about the Float story and yourself, Colin?
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Yeah, I think Float started life in, I guess, as an idea back in 2019. And not 2019, 2009. I was running a digital agency, which was my first business. So basically building websites and then transitioning more into building web applications. And I started thinking about, as every business kind of goes through this transition where you feel like you're very much working in the business and you've got a job rather than a business. And I started taking some time out on Friday mornings to try and work on the business and think about, how could I get this business to work for me so that I get to do the things that I want to do rather than just firefighting all the time. And one of the first things I thought, I'm being stuck with is the finances. So I was having, I was the person who was sending out all the invoices, chasing the invoices, communicating with the accountants, all that kind of stuff. And, really thought, how can I get rid of this piece of work that I particularly enjoy? And so actually at the time I was also running a spreadsheet for my personal finances that I built out of frustration of sort of not really being able to get clear on my personal finances and being in debt essentially from uni, which I'd never managed to clear the overdraft. So if anybody's ever had that experience of going to the ATM and seeing that there's no money, that was my experience, and I just thought, I can't run a business and do this. So I built a spreadsheet to get it, and the sort of aha moment for me in that spreadsheet was realizing that when I did a graph and I could sort of track and see if my budget shows that I'm spending £100 more than I earn each month, the graph goes down, and if I spend £100 less each month, the graph goes up, and amazingly you get out of your overdraft at some point in the future. So I think it was a combination of that visual view and being able to view it over like a longer period of time that kind of gave me the incentive to really try and stick to a budget personally. And then we realized that actually, hold on, we could apply this to our business as well. And so that's how I started trying to run the finances in the business. And then, amazingly bumped into these guys from another startup in Edinburgh called Free Agent at a conference, and they told us about their product, which is cloud accounting. And we'd never wanted to run desktop software for accounting, which is kind of the way before that, Sage or something like that. And so we gave it a try and really loved it, and then realized that it was more about historical, and really what was interesting to me was the future. So asked them about it, and they said, we're not going to do this, but we've got an API. And so we were able to then start thinking about, hold on, could we make our spreadsheet and take all the data out of the accounting software and help project it forwards? And that's kind of where the idea came from. So 2009, I got to go over to a thing called Startup School in San Francisco, in Berkeley, and did a one-day course there with the likes, and got to visit like Airbnb and Dropbox when they were all just starting. So that was really where I was like, yeah, this is the time. I want to do this. I want to transition out of the existing business and build a software company. So that's kind of a long-winded background to your question, Ollie.
Sorry, totally forgot how to unmute myself. So obviously cash flow is what Float is all about, but why, it seems like an obvious question, but why is it so important, especially right now? I mean, so many people who are listening in, so many people who are running businesses are going to be super worried about cash flow. Why is it
Yeah,
right in particular?
So, I mean, interestingly, like one of the big sort of slogans of Y Combinator, I remember at the time when I was over there, was build something people want. And that really sort of stuck with me because I thought, people want cash, people want to be on top of their cash flow. And certainly I wanted to be on top of it. But I think when we got started, we realized that not everybody really did, or not everybody really cared, um, or they didn't care enough to do something about it. And so I guess Float's been a slow burn back from when we launched it in 2012 officially. Um, and a lot of businesses have taken it up and run with it. And then a lot of businesses kind of can tend to get complacent when they've got cash in the bank, or they hire somebody who's kind of full-time job. So they're just going to do it in a spreadsheet. And what we find is that, that challenge of being more of a vitamin than a painkiller. But what we also still fundamentally really believe that this is something that every business should be running. And doing it in a spreadsheet's not the right way. It needs to be real time. It needs to be automated. Businesses need to know exactly where their cash is at, not just by looking at how much is in their bank account, but what's happening from what bills and invoices are going out tomorrow, at the end of the week, when the payroll goes out at the end of the month. What's that going to leave us with? What happens if we take on another member of staff? Like, could we model a different scenario based on, expansion or contraction? This client's just gone bust. What happens if they phone us up and tell us they're not going to be able to get paid or they're not going to pay us in the next 3 weeks? How much money are we going to need for a loan? So those are the questions that we wanted to provide. And we've always been really passionate about, when businesses get a hold of their finances in this way from a cash flow point of view, they're much more likely to be successful. And so right now, this has just become so critical for people. I think that there's some stat that we saw that most businesses are running like with 30 to 60 days cash in the bank. And so they're constantly relying on new money coming in. So now, with the taps being turned off, I mean, startups are maybe a little bit of an exception here, because often they'll raise money. Like, we've just raised some cash, which we can talk about later. But so we've got, cash in the bank, which feels great. And other startups are in the same position. They're more thinking like, we're running out of money in 18 months or 12 months. So cash flow on a shorter term basis isn't that relevant for them. But if you're a business like my old business, where we were doing work for clients and expecting money to come in at the end of the next week or the next month, that cash flow is absolutely crucial. So now that some companies are gone bust and they're not able to pay, we're thinking about furloughing staff. Not us, but a lot of businesses. It just becomes trying to model all that in a spreadsheet and get your head around it is really difficult. So the fact that we've got that kind of live connection to the actual accounts to show you your historical, and then help you very quickly sort of set budgets and explore scenarios and go and ignore the invoices that you thought you might be getting, or even put in for 50% of them, then that's the kind of solution that Float can bring, and it brings it. It's really relevant at the moment, obviously.
So I know tons of freelancers and agencies that are, having the same problems that you just said, where like their clients aren't paying. Even clients that they have contracts with are just saying, I'm sorry, we can't pay you. It's as simple as that. And you're probably not going to sue us because you're too small, which really sucks. Do you worry about the knock-on effect for SaaS businesses like yourself? Are those, if companies like that aren't making money, like, are you seeing the possibility of your cash flow being in trouble?
Yeah, we've definitely seen, we've seen our churn increase in the last, in the last couple of weeks, but we've also seen, we're very fortunate that we've seen a huge surge in signups as well. So I think we're certainly net positive from our business point of view. But yeah, the knock-on effects are huge. And so we've implemented, a policy now where businesses come to council will actually say, look, if this is about cash flow for you, then let us help you through this and give you 80% discount for the next couple of months just to tide you over. so that, you know, it's always ironic that, you know, for a business to be canceling our software in the time that they need it most. And unfortunately, that's just some of the things, sometimes the way it goes. But yeah, I think we've always thought about, you know, if a business is really struggling, like, how can we help them? So yeah, that was a very quick fix for us, just to kind of go in and offer a discount for companies that are struggling to pay, so that they can actually use Float to help them through the difficult patch. And, you know, we're not trying to profit off that. So yeah, it's I think there's tons of knock-on effects, and really, I guess what we're hoping for is that also, you know, by looking at all your options, by modeling loans, by modeling staff reductions, you know, what is the cash gap? So if you think about it on a graph, you know, our cash flow is going to take a dip, potentially into the red. Like, how much of that how long do we have? Is there a low point? And if we're thinking that maybe in the next 6 months this thing might be we might be back to some kind of level of normalcy. You know, how long do we need that money for? And just knowing that number, going, we can survive if we get this much cash in from a loan, and pushing back some of our bills maybe, and yeah, reducing some of this, either furloughing or agreeing with staff to reduce wages for a bit, then I think all those things can give you the number that you need, and then you can really actively go out and put a good case forward to whoever's lending to get that money in the bank.
So do you think that's a sensible solution? I know a bunch of people who are looking to raise investment right now, and you're pretty lucky that you've got investment line, I guess, that, you know, you're in a semi-comfortable position for a while, that you've got a decent runway. Not saying it's roses, but I know people who are halfway through raising a round right now, and they're kind of terrified about cash flow. I guess, do you have any advice for them? It's quite a meta question about investment.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of chat that I've seen on sort of investor channels, and I was chatting to Mark from Techstart about this, and he was just saying like, people have a memory. If you've got investors who are committed, I think investors want to invest. You know, there's obviously that knock-on effect that if some people pull out, and if you've got some angels that are pulling out, you know, I think good investors will continue to invest. And, you know, I think you just have to be honest about that and say, look, will you back us? Because obviously this is going to be a tough time, but we can get through this. And this is our projection to show that we're going to be around after this, and we can deliver. So I think having a real clear handle on your finances and exactly what you need, you know, hopefully the investors will not be trying to take advantage, because that is typically a tactic when it's competitive. You know, there's always a battle over valuation, and the shorter your runway, the more power the investor has. So, you know, I think I'm hopeful that there will be investors will be honorable in this time, and I think there's not much you can do except just to ask the question, say, look, are you going to back us, and can you let us know? Because obviously you can understand that I've got, you know, there's a lot on the line. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I think it's definitely tough right now. Do you want to tell us a bit more about your story from going from bootstrapping to raising investment as well? Just because I think that adds a little bit more flavor to that. And I should also say to everyone, Q&A is open. There is one question that's come in that I would love to see more for Colin. So please do start asking.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think our journey's been interesting. Like, we've tried to take a slower approach to funding. You know, I want to build a product that people want to use, and I think there are some startups that just want to go on on the journey. They raise a lot of money, have the startup lifestyle, and if it fails, you know, I haven't really lost a huge amount, because, you know, you probably, if you can raise money, you've kind of got the reputation, you got the journey, And that's one approach, but it's definitely not ours. I wanted to build a business that that becomes a force for good in the world. We always talk about 3 Ps: people, product, and planet. So for me, actually creating an organization that people want to belong to, and I think we've got a really strong culture at Float, and that's taken a lot of work to get there, and a lot of lessons learned along the way. But for me, that's just been a huge something that I wanted to learn. And so when you've got that kind of sense of why am I doing this, it really helps through the hard times. Product for me is obvious. Like I love the space. I love helping businesses. There's not a solution out there at the moment. It's getting more competitive, but we're up for the fight. And I think working with a team to build product has been a really good learning curve for me. Early days are fun. You can just build stuff, and it's very fast. As you scale up, you become more challenges, more people involved. There's decisions cost more. But we're learning about how to build product and how to innovate on product fast. And then planet for us is a relatively new one, but just thinking, we have a responsibility as businesses to be a force for good in the world. And so what are we going to do differently as an organization to sort of think about how we impact the world that we live in? And we're just starting that conversation, because I think we've just kind of moved out of that sort of scrappy, are we going to make it as a company, to yes, we're going to make it, but we don't know to what extent. But now we're starting to think about how we give back, and that's a really exciting place to come into. So all of that has made us to be, I think, has given us pause when we come to raising money, because we've just seen it happen, the wrong type of investment, the wrong investors that are just scale fast, and if it doesn't work, then well, at least we tried. That's not the kind of investors we're looking for. So that rules out a lot of VCs, and VCs are in it, they're in it to make money, and that's obviously that is absolutely fine for them. But for us, it's not just about that. So we've taken money really carefully and really slowly from angels. I think we did 20K, 100K, 200K, 500K, and then 1.5 million in this last round. And up until the last round, it was all angels. And we brought in, just through taking time, and building up a network of other sort of founders and stuff. It's been brilliant to bring in people that have, I've got to know well and trust. And then when they've exited their business, folks like Gavin, Dutch, and Robin, and Paul from iZettle, Garth Williams, those kind of people have come in and backed us. And then this latest round, it's just so fortunate to have a really great VC come in, Marchman Capital, who are Marchman Ventures, who are just basically 2 guys that ran a business successfully and sold it in the travel space. So they're brilliant. They built a great company culture, and they're patient as well. So they're not sort of saying scale at all costs. So that's been really brilliant, just to make sure we got that right, and feel very fortunate in the way that it's happened. But the biggest thing for us has just been always get to revenue as fast as possible, because that's when you get optionality. And so for us, hitting like 1 million ARR was a big focus for the last few years. And just when we get to that number, then we give ourselves, we're going to have options as to where we take the money from, rather than having to kind of hope that one VC will eventually back us, and we'll be lucky just to take whoever we can get the money from.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that fits into a lot of the rhetoric of like zebras over unicorns in the last few years, of like trying to build more sustainable businesses based on revenues instead of growth. you're actually doing it, which is awesome. A lot of folks talking about it, but you've built a successful, sustainable company. There's some questions coming in from the floor.
Yeah, I can see.
One of these actually probably relates tangentially to what you were just saying, but Graham was asking if you have an exit strategy, like would you sell it to zero, if you could?
So exit strategy has always been an interesting hot topic for us, because I think we've just, I really like I don't know if you've seen the CB Insights post on exit strategy, and they were very clear on, we do not have an exit strategy. We're focused on playing the game and not taking our eye off the ball. And they've got a really good gif of a American footballer in the end zone, taking his eye off the ball and fumbling it over the line. And I think that was always, that was always very pertinent for me. And yet, I think, do we have an exit strategy? I think, yes, at some point we see, I think what I've realized is it's not binary. So for me, I always struggle with the sort of thought of, building up the company, building this great culture and then selling it, and thinking, like, what would I do? This is what I want to do. This is where my learning journey is. This is where I'm growing as a CEO. So the worst thing for us would be to sell right now. We're not looking to sell, because everybody's just feels we all want to go on that growth journey. That's the kind of people we've hired. So I guess that's the strategy, is to not want to, no, we don't want to exit right now. But also, some types of acquisition or taking some money off the table at some point in the future. There's different ways to do that, whether it's private equity or, partnering with another company that you really respect their values, and that you feel like you could work with them. So that's probably my answer on exit strategy. Yes, at some point, we want to see return on this, but everything's always up in the air. So our goal is to double our revenue this year. And if we do that, then that puts us in a really strong position, not to need to take external funding in the immediate future, and also just to kind of grow at our own pace then. And so we're that's how we think about that one.
Cool. I'll ask one more question from the Q&A. Some people are asking in chat as well. But this came from an anonymous person, and this is a question I think everyone is getting asked right now, and it is again related to floats, it's related to cash flow. But so what's your take on remote working in terms of keeping company culture intact? Because I always used to love seeing Float's Burrito Fridays. It's coming out forced to sit in the kitchen and they'll hang out together physically. How are you managing in the new?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been very in office rather than remote, and that's always been my preference. Just feels like when you're working on a product that's a problem that's not solved, you need to get around the whiteboard as much as possible. And I didn't want to build a remote company. That wasn't really ever been my objective. Obviously now I've been forced into it. So I think we're trying to look at it as like, what are the opportunities? What are the learnings? I think it's not a really fair experiment, because, it's one thing to go remote whenever you've got the house to yourself. And it's very different to be remote with 3 kids, everybody under the same roof. So in terms of the culture, what we're trying to do. So, we're doing our stand-up. So we have a Tuesday stand-up and a Friday stand-up at the end of the day. And what we did last week, was we did everybody, instead of saying what we worked on, we put that in an email. And we have a weekly email from engineering and a weekly email from marketing. And at the end of, so at the stand-up, rather than everybody going around and saying what they've done or what, that kind of thing, we just said, how are you doing? What's been your biggest challenge this week? What's been your, the thing that you're most your biggest success. And that kind of changed the conversation a bit. So I think we're just experimenting with how we connect. What we might do this week, I think I'm going to try, is using the breakout rooms in Zoom and rather than having the whole, like starting with 20 people and then breaking into smaller rooms, so that you can actually have better conversations with people that you might not get to speak to. So like, this is new for us, and I think we're just trying to experiment as much as we can. Obviously Zoom calls and all that kind of stuff is great, but I'm sure most of you are doing that already. What else are we doing? So I've actually started thinking, like, how do I lead, and what can I do differently? So I've started recording a daily video in the mornings, just to the team, which I'm enjoying. I think, I've heard good things about it, and I've started interviewing. I decided I'm going to interview one person in the team every day. So I'm jumping on a 20-minute call to do This Is Your Life, and asking people a bit more about who are you, how'd you end up with Float? What's your home working situation at the moment? What's your favorite movie? That kind of stuff. And just trying to build connection. And again, like, that's not something we would have done in normal working situations. So, that's been really good fun. And then I publish one of those a day. So it's been good for me to get to know people, and it's good for the team, hopefully, as well. So yeah, it's just trying different stuff like that, and being willing to get it wrong as well. So yeah. Yeah.
I love the little round of applause that you got there, just for.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's something. Trying different stuff and not being afraid to be wrong. That's got your applause.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying a whole bunch of different things in Team CodeBase as well, and we're also thinking about the community as well. One cool plugin for Slack that we found the other day, I think Adam found it, maybe Colin, was something that randomly pairs people up in a Slack to have a chat. Little things like that, just to the team in contact with each other. I think that stuff helps a lot.
Yeah. I think as leaders, that's been I had a coaching call the other day, and that was kind of my focus, was just, as leaders, what's been asked of us at the moment. So, it's really brought it into focus for me. Normally I'm so busy, I come into the office, I'm doing my email, we've got meetings, and now I've got a bit more time, a bit more space in the diary, no travel. How can I be a good leader to my team, and what do they need?
How far from CodeBase?
Realizing that everybody's going through. What's that?
No travel? How far from CodeBase do you live?
I live about 5 minutes away from CodeBase, but I mean, travel to London and Australia, where we've just set up an office. So that's been that kind of travel. Yeah. So it's just having a bit more space. We've also just in experimental things. Kath and I, my wife, we've been getting up earlier. So instead of because I live so close to CodeBase, we've been lucky that I can get up, not that early. And so at the moment we're getting up at 5:30 and trying to get from 6 to 8 in uninterrupted time before the kids wake up. So that's just given, space in a whole new way that I'd never had before. That kind of silence. And I've been doing more journaling and thinking about work and just what I want to do. And so that's been I found that a really rich time to just get into a different headspace. This is a massive opportunity for people at the moment. I know it's hard, and I know some people are scared, but for me, it's just like, take this opportunity for what it is, and try and I don't want to get to the end of this when we're all back in the office and think, oh, I could have made more of that. I could have done different things, whether that's personally or whether that's from a work point of view.
Just sounds slightly sarcastic, the applause.
Sarcastic laughing.
a golf clap.
Yeah.
The question from Donald in the chat about hiring, advice giving in hiring early staff in a startup. I mean, you've gone from, I think Float had what, 4 people when I first met you? And I think the team has changed, I guess, a lot since in the last few years. So any tips you can give on hiring?
Yeah, I mean, my tip on this is, staff it's so crucial. Like, it's just so important to get the right people. One wrong person can change everything. And I think what we had to learn was, like, we're going to make mistakes and just be willing to go, this is so difficult, but I'm not willing to risk, I can't risk the company culture. So in the early days, I took people on, I let people go. And I realized, like, I just was like, you just have to let yourself off the hook and go, I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to, very rarely do you let people go and then think, I've never let anybody go and thought, I wish I hadn't have done that. So, often conversations I have with other founders are, they start talking to you and they start going, well, I've got this one person, and you're like, you know what you need to do, don't you? And they're like, yeah, but they're a good person on the team, kind of like them. And it's like, you just know, like, generally it's the right thing to do to not hold on to people that you just that aren't going to be there to build your company. And so we've learned, we're getting better at that, and we're getting better at not really referencing off other people in the team. So if anybody's got questions or doubts, we don't generally, we try and listen to that. And our biggest thing has been, like, values. So we've just done a lot of work on trying to understand our values. What are they? And I've always kind of resisted it because it feels corporate, and it feels like that kind of classic thing that people put up on their wall and then nobody lives. But actually going, well, what are our values, and what are we looking for? So once we kind of got that, we talk about, for Float, we talk about curiosity and self-improvement. We talk about humility. We talk about positivity, and sort of drive, and those kind of areas. So when we've let people go, we're always able to go, where did that person not work out? Was it a humility piece? Was it drive? Was it a curiosity? And being able to identify, yeah, like, that person did not. And it's always down to values, that when people don't work out, very rarely it's about ability. So yeah, that's my tip, is try and get three values down that you just think, these are what we're going to hire to. And before, when they come to the probation, really ask yourself the question, is this person showing what, do they show? We asked, is this person curious? Are they humble? Do they have drive? Those kind of questions. And that's really helped us all get on the same page.
Yeah, it's super tough. I think a lot of the stuff that you hear from Silicon Valley is very much about fire fast. If people aren't working out, get rid of them. But when it comes to actually being a human and dealing with that stuff, it's keeps you up at night. Of course, it's people's lives, but you got to do what you got to do to make sure that the company is doing.
Yeah. Okay. And I've just seen reading a question about how you created the positive culture from the scrappy growth. I think, just like you said, Ollie, like, we tried to, in the early days, what I call the boy band phase, when there was like 5 of us, we always tried to have lunch together, and we made it a point, like, not to just sit and eat lunch at our desks. And that was something that I took from my previous company, and it just makes such a difference, because a little bit of time in the day to sit down and connect, and laugh together, it makes a big difference. So that's how we did it in the early stages. I remember, like, even, we just, little habits that built up. Like, somebody would go, does anybody need water? And they'd go and fill everybody's water bottle. Or is somebody, making the coffee. It was kind of like one of those rituals that people would just say, I'm making coffee. And then we'd all, we'd all make it for other people. And doing that when you're small is easier. And now that we've got bigger, it's harder to get everybody around the table every day for lunch. So we've really made a thing of like, we'll buy the lunch on Friday, and we want everybody to try and be there if they can, and trying to make those sort of things happen. And then, you know, the engineering team have got into playing table tennis together every lunchtime, which is great. So little things like that, just little rituals, little routines, and it kind of seems to take care of itself if you get those things right.
Cool. I might jump down to the bottom of the Q&A. There's a question from Janine, who you know very well.
Hi, Janine.
Who runs CodeBase Sterling. And you've talked a lot about cash flow already, but I think this is something that, I mean, is really on everyone's minds right now. So she asks, can you share any forecasting tips for founders? So many are cutting costs, increasing financial efficiency at this time, sorry.
So, I mean, obviously, Float's got a free trial at the moment, and I'm not just plugging that for the sake of it. I think, you know, if you're using Xero, which hopefully you are, or QuickBooks, or Free Agent, you know, plug it in, go and take the most of the, you know, free trial up until the end of May. But if you don't want to do that for whatever reason, you know, you literally just need to go into your bank account, write down the cash figure that you have today, write down all your invoices that are due to you, and try and estimate if any of that's going to get paid, and then look at the bills that you have to pay, and see where you don't have to pay those, or you know, you can negotiate on that. So once you've kind of got that in, it's then looking at where are the other things. So rent, payroll, just, you know, you just have to get it all down, and ultimately look at it over a period of time. You know, I think this could be a time to find a good accountant. If you don't feel like you're getting good advice from your accountant, I think now is the time to like literally like let me know, because we've got some great accountants in our network that we can help, that are really on this, that are really be able to help you find the right access to finance and funds. You know, we did a joint webinar with a company called Capitalize, which is really sort of an aggregator for loans and lending, and that's worth having a look. But I would definitely speak to, if you've got, right now is the time when you want to have a good accountant by your side. And, you know, if you're not 100% happy, like, to be honest, we haven't heard a peep from our accountant, you know. Thankfully, we've got an amazing in-house COO who's also a CFO in previous life. So Jan's done a brilliant job of finances from our side. But if, you know, find a good accountant and there's plenty around, and there's plenty of bad ones as well. So that's kind of my tip for how to manage at this point. But yeah, I think, like I was saying earlier, if you can get an idea of what it is, what's your number, and how long you've got, you know, the general advice has been to make cuts now and try and reserve as much cash as you can, and then think about, are there any creative ways that you can bring income in? So, you know, I've seen a training company slashing their prices on a training course they do and moving it to online. You know, it doesn't cost them any extra money to have, you know, they don't need the space, and it's not about a building. So how can we drive people to this and charge a nominal amount? So just, you know, this is about creativity, and it's about getting out of the box and thinking, what can we do to make sure we pull through this? Because at the end of it, it feels like it's going to be, if we're still here, you know, then there's going to be massive amounts of opportunity to rebuild.
Cool. I think we've probably only got time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Do you want to have a peek at the Q&A and pick a couple? Because I realize I'm picking them for you mostly. So
yeah, no, it's fine.
It's a good question about how you identified your values at the bottom.
Yeah, really good book on that called The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. That was really helpful. Another book that I really like that doesn't get a lot of airtime is called Bury My Heart at Conference Room B by a guy called Stan Slap. And he goes through how to pick your values and how to know and how to communicate them. So we're reading both of those books at the moment. Yeah, we've done exit strategy. Yeah,
There's one about how you identified, Jackie asked, how did you decide what to charge for float?
Yeah,
Which comes up all the time.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, again, pricing is a whole other topic, but you know, we I think we started our first idea was £5 a month, and then we realized like that's not going to work. It's far too cheap. And we moved to 12, and then we moved to 20, and then we moved to 29, and then now we're at 49. And I think my feeling on pricing is like, what do I feel like it would be a good price for businesses to pay if they're getting value from our product. So for me, for a business, £100 a month is my target. You know, like I feel like if we're providing peace of mind from a financial point of view to a business, that should be worth £100 a month as a starting point. You know, and it's hard with other software companies, you know, that are at scale and can charge a lot less. But you know, we feel that that's our kind of target price. So basically, rather than thinking about how much should we charge, it's how do we get there. So charging too low always brings in customers that are demanding. That might not be the right customers. And there's tons of customers that want to pay 50 quid a month for float. And that's fine, because our target is to get, you know, is to find the customers that really value what we do. And maybe once we get there, then we can find a way to make a lighter version of the product. But I think start with the customers that you want to target, and that you think there's a, you know, the price feels right. And that's kind of been our approach, rather than, you know, tentatively trying to come in at a really low price. And yeah, and then you've got people that are maybe paying for it but don't really care about it, because it's you know, 20 quid a month is nothing. So actually you want to get it to the point where it's like, if this doesn't work, people are going to cancel. So then you've got a really true view of whether people value your product or not. That's kind of my advice. So there's different schools of thought out there. But yeah, and the other thing is just like, yeah, where can you see, where's your value metric? So right now, you know, ultimately there's we pay for software. We started paying 50 quid a month for it, and now we're paying 600 quid a month, and it, you know, we get value out of it, so it's fine. With Float, we've got too many of our customers are on our lowest pricing plan, and we want to work out how to add more value to those customers so that we're willing to pay more.
Cool. There's a question from Callum about marketing and sales. Can you see that one halfway down the Q&A? How has your promotional methods changed? Are you finding social media and digital marketing increasing to try and help businesses having new cash flow issues as a result of
yeah, so we've gone into emergency mode, I think, not from the fact that we're in an emergency, but we've totally changed course in the last few weeks, because our strategy has been to go directly to businesses. We found that the accountants that we were working with were too slow to roll out Float to their clients, and it wasn't really solving a problem for them, so they weren't as interested. What we're doing now is we've realized, like, well, now we've had an unprecedented amount of accountants sign up in the last 2 weeks. So like over 200% growth than we would normally have. I think we had, 6 weeks worth of signups in 3 days last week from accountants. So everybody has moved from the direct channels that we were trying to acquire on into partners, which are accountants and bookkeepers, and how can we support them as they support their clients in this time. So the marketing team have been amazing at just really like changing the messaging. Is all about helping businesses, all about helping accountants offer value and show them how to plan. And we've given accountants like bumps up in their licenses so they can add way more clients, and it's just been really fascinating learning for us. So we're I don't know how much we've changed our messaging, but we've certainly changed our tactics to try and really capture and help the accountants and bookkeepers that are really struggling at the moment you know, partly for their own businesses, but to help the clients that they're working with. Yeah, it's been the biggest change.
I guess it's a really interesting question about messaging right now, because it's, you know, like you don't want to over acknowledge it, you know, be like, if it look like you're kind of profiteering, but also you don't want to under acknowledge it and look like, you know, you're being callous. You know, there's even yesterday a bunch of April Fool's jokes that went out that probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, that we, yeah, I was really, even with our team, I was like, this is not the time to do an April Fool's joke. So it just felt like you got to read the situation, and even we've changed our tone slightly to go like, you know, we were making, I think at the beginning we were quite lighthearted about it, and now we've kind of realized like, gosh, this is, for some businesses, this is the hardest thing they've ever gone through. You know, they're making super hard decisions, you know, and it's just such a tricky time for some people. So, you know, it's a real mix. For some people, just business as usual, or not as usual, but just life's not affecting too much. And other people, it's just like their world has collapsed and they're unemployed and they've got kids in the house, and, you know, they're nervous about the future or their relatives. And so you just have to be, it's really tough to get the tone right at the moment.
Cool. Well, yeah, I kind of want to end on a note of positivity, because we've probably got time for one more question after you say the world is ending. Are there any that are jumping out to you in the Q&A?
Do you think it would have been easier to get investment at Float being based on CA?
In California, I guess.
On CA?
On CA?
Don't know what that is. Have you given up control in return for investment? No. So we're still, you know, still feel very aligned with the board, and you know, they're very supportive of what we're trying to do. So, no, it doesn't feel like we've given up control at all on that one. Colin Kirby, how is it actually possible to model going forward? Yeah, I think worst case scenario is really what everybody needs to be looking at the moment, and just getting an idea, like I was saying, of what's the number of not much coming in and still maintaining your outgoings. I think you can get an idea of what that needs to be, and then I would be looking for loans to bridge that, and being very clear on why you need it and putting together the case for it. That's often a big factor for lenders. Yeah, I think that's really it from my side, Ollie.
Yeah, well,
else?
Thanks so much. There are a few questions that I just don't think we're going to have time to get to, I'm afraid. But thank you to everyone for asking so many questions and keeping the discussion going. It's nice to, you know, have this as a two-way conversation instead of it just being broadcast mode. So I guess just want to say a huge thanks to Colin. Can we do the round of applause? And stop. There's always one. Well, thank you again, Colin. I'm going to quickly just mention our next events that are coming up. So our events calendar is filling up with online stuff. So it's not just the webinars that we're running as part of the community stuff. We've also got our legal tech webinars going on as well. Creative circles, the various coffee mornings. There's a mindfulness session pre-wired. Our kids programming club is coming back online next week. So there's a whole bunch of resources on thisiscodebase.com/events. So have a look and sign up, level up as well, which is, if you haven't seen it, Barry and Kelly in Sterling have been running a YouTube channel of courses, both for kids and adults, to learn to code. They've been making a video very, very regularly. So do check that out if you're looking to entertain your kids for a couple of hours. Yeah, any final thoughts, Colin, or will we just?
I mean, I didn't So I just Janine sort of thing, a level up. I'm not sure what that is, but I actually think this is an opportunity to level up. That's the way I'm approaching this season. This is like I said, this is an opportunity. And so I heard somebody that my little anecdote is, are you going to go through this, or are you going to grow through this? Super cheesy, but for me, it's like, I want to grow through it. So I'm taking time in the morning to just, I think it's like, think about your routine. Like, what's your routine that's going to get you through this? So, for me, it's about waking up at a good, a decent time, getting some like exercise in. I've got a challenge to try and get to 100 press ups. That's a personal goal for me. Haven't hit it yet, but
how many you do right now?
I did. I got to 90 the other day, which
Okay.
was, I started off being able to do 20, and then I realized I could take a break and do a bit more. So, yeah, so that's been really fun. And then meditation as well. I've been finding Inside Timer is invaluable. They've got some really good meditations on there, or mindfulness exercises. And I just like, sometimes I don't get a lot out of it. Sometimes I do get a lot out of it, and it's just the discipline to just do it. So that having that routine every morning of getting out outside, drinking a glass of water, doing the mindfulness thing, putting on some good music and journaling, and I feel like I've won the day. And even if everything else goes, to pot, it's kind of like that's a really nice way to start off. So I'll leave it at that.
Cool. Well, speaking of routine, I have some broccoli soup that is staring at me right now. So I can
only imagine, Ollie, you're in your immaculate kitchen back there.
Like a hipster cafe.
Yeah. Ceramic pot and custom built wooden spoon.
Yeah. I made myself, of course.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks again, Colin.
Cheers, Ollie.
Cheers for now. Bye.